forget to come to my Instagram, what is that? Instagram page and send me pictures of the yarns that you picked out and what needles you selected. I would love to see that. Hello, sweet friend. Thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Inger Denny, and I am here to help you start your journey of knitting. You know what, just a very quick backstory about me is I had the stereotypical grandmother who would knit, crochet, tat, make homemade pies, you name it. And when I was a kid, she wanted to teach me how to knit, and at that time I had the attention span of a gnat. So it was pretty much thank you, but no thank you. Fast forward several years, I ended up going out to California, and I was working in the TV and film industry as background, stand-in, you name it. But there was a lot of downtime on set. And at that point, I was in my mid-20s, and one of my friends always had knitting in her bag. She would constantly make knit items for friends as gifts, obviously for herself as well. And as I was watching her, I just said, you know what? It's time. I want to learn. And especially working in that industry, when you work on set, there's a lot of downtime. So I had my friend teach me the basics, and my heart was not only did I think it was going to be a fun craft, but I thought it was a way for me to be able to give back. When I was working, finally got my hand of knitting hats. Was working on a project, and somebody who happened to be a day player came up to me and mentioned to me an organization that unfortunately since then has gone away, but at that time they were sending baby items, hats, knitted sweaters, you name it, to the different hospitals in the area. And that just gave me chills, and that said to me, that's what I want to start doing. It is very therapeutic craft, but not only that, I love the fact that I can make something and give back. So that's really been my heart in this, that though I've been knitting for, I just realized 21 years, most of the things I make are hats and scarves. I have ventured into like a poncho. I have not done a sweater yet, but maybe we can do that together in a future episode. But the fact that you're here says to me that you have some interest in starting to knit, which is fantastic. But here's the thing, where do you even begin? And there's so many wonderful tutorial channels out there, but very often they're already starting with the knit stitch, which we will get there. But more than anything, how do you even start? What are the what project do you start with? What tools do you buy? And it's very easy to go into the store. You see these aisles of yarn. You see all these different needles. You see really long needles. You see, for example, you see metal needles. There are wood needles. You see these very crazy looking needles like this. There's so many different things. There's different yarns. There's like a really chunky yarn. There's like fun, for sure, a little sparkly yarn that is fun to work with. But what do you even buy? So that's where I want to help you before we even start the actual knitting part. So I'm going to give you a homework assignment to go shopping. And I know that might sound very horrible to do, but let's go shopping. But what I'd recommend for the very first project, because I want you to get used to the whole feeling of what it's like to hold the needles, what's it like to make the knit stitch, and just get really comfortable with that before you go crazy buying tons of yarn, tons of different needles. I think start small. And some of the things that I'm going to show you is what to look for in the yarn as far as reading the label to know what size needles to purchase with that yarn. What I think we should do together as our very first project is making a scarf, but with a very chunky yarn, which this right here, I don't know if you can see, it's a very thick fiber, and versus maybe something like this, you see how very thin that yarn is, which is great to work with, and I love using this kind of yarn for baby hats. But I want you to have more instant gratification to really see the process of the project. But what I'm going to show you in a moment is just what to look for at the label to then know what kind of needles to get. But what I think for a very first knitter, as you're getting the feel of anything, so like I showed you before, you have the slick metal needles, which is fine and great, but when you're first starting out, they can slip through the yarn. What I would recommend you starting out with is either wooden needles, or you can use plastic needles, which I have right here. Here's some plastic needles, just to give you an idea. Pardon me, my favorite kind of needles to use are circular needles, but we'll get into that later. I don't want to throw too much at you. But what to look for as far as the length, because you'll see, like I just showed you, these needles, but then there are these, which are much shorter. Which do you start with? Again, it depends on what project you're going to be creating. Okay, so now what to look for when you're looking at yarn to know what needles to select. When you go, some of my favorite places to shop are like Hobby Lobby, Michael's, even Walmart, they have a good selection. But when you go to the yarn, to the yarn section, so here's an idea of a chunky yarn, really pretty pink, and I got this online at Amazon. But once you get familiar with the yarns that you like, then I would say go to shopping online. But the main thing is just feeling the texture of the yarn, because some of them are a little more scratchy, some of them are very soft, so you just feel and see which ones you like best to work with. But you see on this label, it's going to show you, sorry, let me see if I can find it in my camera. There it is. So first of all, most of the labels will come with a sample pattern that you can have fun with and play, but some of them might be a little too advanced before you're ready. But just, if it's something that you're interested in trying, just save that label, keep it in maybe a binder or folder, and get back to it later. And see, you'll see free pattern in the back. So what this is telling you is, let's go here. First of all, of course, you have the color of that yarn. And then right here, you're seeing on the label the weight of the yarn, which is indicated by this number. And this is the key, pardon me, for selecting the needle size, because you'll see right here, it says US 11 if you're a knitter, and it says over here, if you happen to decide to go into crocheting, it's telling you which crochet hook size to use. So here it's telling you that the best needles to use with this yarn is size 11 needles. Well, what does that mean? So you go to the store, and the needles, you'll see right here, will say right here what, let's see if that's, which needle size it is. And right above it, it says 11 US. And then below it is more the metric system. But anyhow, you're going to be looking for this number on the needle. Some needles will have them, as you'll see, right at the very tip. It says, I don't know if it's easy to see there, but it says right there, that's an 8. But you'll just keep an eye out to see, again, there's giving you, oh, that's a size 11 needle. But, so you'll pick out your yarn and your needles that match. And it's more of a gauge as far as what type of needles to select. And here, just so you'll know, on the label is telling you some of the knitting instruction, pardon me, not knitting, washing instructions. So you'll see all the symbols for laundering to let you know what's the best way to wash the items that you make. And this is an acrylic yarn, just to give you an idea there. I'm going to show you, don't mind my mess. So here's one I love working with from Hobby Lobby. It's the Yarn Bead collection. And some of these yarns are very inexpensive. And I would say if you're starting out, just getting a very low cost effective is what I like to say, yarn
just as you're getting familiar with it. So like I said, Yarn Bee is a brand that I love that you can get at Hobby Lobby. And so here, this is telling you, this is another key element to look for, is a lot number. Say you're going to be making something that's going to require several, what they call skeins of yarn. That's what this is. So either call it a ball or a skein of yarn. But if you need more than one of, say, this color, make sure that they have a matching lot number, because that's sometimes the dyes when they work with the yarn are not going to be spot on color wise. You might see a slight variation, so make sure the lot number matches if you're going to use multiple skeins. So here's another place to see. Here, this kind of yarn, you see the knitting needles is recommending that you use a US 7 needle. And here you're also then seeing the washing instructions, and it's telling you right here the weight of the yarn, because when you look at patterns, when you get to that point, you're going to see what they recommend for that project. And again, the washing instructions right there.
Okay, now that I've shown you a couple of the yarns that I like to work with and that I recommend starting with, like this chunky yarn, and I've shown you the needles, but what else to get for your knitting bag? And the one thing I first recommend in your knitting bag is to avoid anything with Velcro. I've learned that the hard way, because I've had yarn in my knitting bag that has Velcro, and guess what? It gets stuck. Avoid that. Any knitting bag I like that just has a zipper, or it can be even open. But as an example, this is a knitting bag I like to work with. Another knitting bag, actually, if anything else, it's a makeup bag. It's super easy, and so I carry this around with me a lot, or the one that I just showed you. So for your knitting bag, I would recommend getting this tapestry needle, which is, you can get either straight or this little curve. This is my favorite one that I like to work with. So have a tapestry needle, and the reason why is when you finish a project, you're going to have to weave in the ends. So make sure you have that. Have yourself crafting scissors. I mean, any scissors would work, but I just like working with these because they're also very compact to travel with. And make sure, even though you're not doing any crochet work, have a crochet hook. That way, as you're knitting, as you learn about knitting, if you have a drop stitch, it's a great tool to use to pick up the stitch, and we'll get there, don't you worry. And I definitely like to have a pencil on hand, because if I'm working with a pattern, and we'll get there, but I like to make notes on there. And so those are my key things that I keep in my knitting bag. There are some other things, but we're not there yet. But anyhow, I would encourage you to go to the store this week, feel the yarns, find what you'd like to work with, and I would look forward to meeting up with you here so we can create in order to donate, which would be so wonderful to give back to your community in so many different ways. So thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to come to my Instagram page and send me pictures of the yarns that you picked out and what needles you selected. I would love to see that. And what I would love for you to do is leave in the comment below why you're even interested in knitting, what inspired you to want to knit, and even what projects you would like to make in the future. So don't forget, hit that button, hit that notification button, and we'll meet up next week as we start your journey of knitting. Thank you so much for stopping by. Mwah!